I decided to go on a walk at night and ended up in a forest. This thing still haunts me to this day. Let me start this off with some basic information. I was 16 while this happened. My home life and relationship with my parents wasn't the best. I found that night's stroll through our small city was quite calming for me, so that's what I did that night. After a huge argument with my parents about God knows what, I decided to go on a walk. I grabbed my headphone and put on my shoes. I did all of that as quietly as possible. My room was located on the ground floor of the house, which made it easier for me to sneak out. I connected my headphones to my phone and played some music right after I left through my window. I was on the outskirts of the city, right next to the forest. In all my life, I heard numerous stories of the said forest. Some say that it's haunted, and others say that some weird and deadly creatures live there. This is all bullshit, I thought every time I heard another tale about this place. I looked at the time on my phone, and it was 2:40 a.m., so I decided to head inside that forest. Yes, I know, dumb idea, but I was a teenager that needed some one-on-one time with nature to calm me down, and the forest seemed like the best option at that time. I was already 40 minutes deep inside the forest when weird things started happening. My music was cut off. I looked at my phone only to find that it was dead. Damn it, I said under my breath as I tried to turn it on to no avail. I sighed deeply. It was supposed to be a relaxing time, not frustrating. In that second I heard the bushes to my left rustle. I immediately turned to look that way but saw nothing. Probably a rabbit, I thought, and turned to the direction which I came from. Good thing that I was following the main path. After 5 minutes of walking I heard another rustle behind me, but again I found nothing, so I continued my journey. The same thing happened 3 or 4 more times before I saw it. After the fifth time of hearing something behind me, I turned around and immediately froze. There was a white, bony hand sticking out of the bush. I managed to catch a glimpse of what seemed like an African kudu skull before I started running. I was terrified. Right after I started sprinting, I heard a horrifying cry and the patter of four legs. So now I was out of the forest and in the middle of abandoned train tracks. I frenetically looked around for the creature that was chasing me previously. I only saw a glint of white eyes on the edge of the forest, watching my every movement. I stared back at the monster for a few seconds before running along the train tracks. I made it home as quickly as possible and locked my window right away. I didn't sleep that night at all. I was too scared by what I saw. Now I'm 20 years old and I never told anyone about that night. I'm always on the run, switching cities trying to escape, but it always seems to find a way back to me. Day by day I hear and see it getting closer. I hear the horrifying sounds it makes. I see its face and feel that haunting presence. To whoever reading this, don't make the same mistake. If anyone tells you to not enter some place, just listen. I didn't and now I'm paying the price. If you're reading this, I'm already gone. It's 3:45 a.m. and I hear this creature scratching on my bedroom door. There's no escape, so I will just accept my fate.
It wanted to take me away. I'm homeless and living out of my car, but not for the reasons you'd think. You see, I'm not what you would call a stereotypical mama's boy. Never had any girlfriends, not many friends either. I was an only child who would spend all my time clinging to my mother. I didn't have a dad, but my mom made up for it. When she wasn't working, she spent all of her time with me, taking me to the movies, playing video games together. She was my entire world, the only person I needed. Unfortunately for me, this piece would all come crashing down. In my early 20s, my mom started getting sick. I tried so hard to take care of her and prayed every single day, but things only got worse and the cancer would quickly take her life. Now, without hope and all alone, I spiraled into a deep depression. House notes, bills, it all rested on my shoulders now. It was safe to say that I was a deer in the headlights. I had no social skills and no relatives who were willing to help. Before I knew it, I was living in a house with no lights or running water. I was in the worst situation of my life and ended up in a dark place. To keep from falling into drugs or something even worse, I had to leave. One day I packed up my car and didn't look back. I drove for what seemed like forever, seeing more of the world than I ever had before. I met all sorts of people during my travels. Some freaks out, but others pretty cool. Literally everything was a new experience for someone who had been sheltered all of his life. But oddly enough, I didn't feel afraid at all. I did miss my dear mother, but there was a feeling of freedom with this new life. Until one day, something happened that forced me to consider finding a more traditional home. The story I'm about to share is one that most probably you won't believe, but I know what happened and it will stick with me for the rest of my days. It all started around midnight on a lonely country road. There was nothing but cow fields and old barns as far as the eye could see. I was trying to make it to the next town before calling it a night, but I had been driving all day and was getting pretty tired. Seeing as how I didn't want to wreck my only home, I decided it was time to pull over. I parked on the outskirts of one of the large cow fields. It was a clear night with the stars filling in the sky, so I figured out it would be nice to break out my tarp and enjoy the view. After setting up, I sat down and opened up a bag of chips. In moments like this, I always found myself thinking of my mother. I missed the times we shared together, which is why I had to leave. I didn't really know what life had in store, but there was no going back. I couldn't stomach having to live alone in that empty house. Over time, my eyes started to get heavy. I turned on my side ready to get some shut-eye, hoping an angry farmer wouldn't greet me with a shotgun the next morning. As I did, the most peculiar thing happened. What seemed like a ball of fire or some sort of metaphor whizzed by. Thinking it was a shooting star, I paid it no mind. I would attempt to nod off, but that proved impossible, as the nearby woods gave off an ominous orange glow. My first thought was that this could be a forest fire, but as I rose to my feet, a loud whirring sound filled the air, to the point that I started having strong headaches. I limped back to my car riding in pain, prepared to call for help. While trying to dig for my phone, I heard a strange thud from behind me, sort of like footsteps from a very large person. I turned to see whom or what was behind me. That's when I saw it. A giant creature above 7 or 8 feet tall in stature crept towards me. It seemed to be in some sort of metallic suit, giving off the same glow from before. The being wore an astronaut-like helmet that hid its facial features. It tried reaching for me with a slender and wrinkled arm. I instantly screamed and locked myself inside my car. Tears started to swell as I feared for my life. I just lost my mother a few months ago, and now a monster was trying to kill me. What did it want, and was my life seriously about to end here? All these things swirled through my mind until I heard a voice, one that came from within my own head, speaking in a very kind tone. "Do not fear, human, for I have come to you with an offer. Come with us and learn all there is. See sights that no other human could fathom. When you return, eternal knowledge will belong to you and you alone." I understood the words clearly, but my fear overpowered everything else. Before giving the offer any thought, I yelled to the top of my lungs, "No, Zoo. Just leave me alone. Go away." Following my outburst, everything went silent, save for my nervous breathing I tried so desperately to hide. It seemed like an eternity had passed and I didn't hear anything, so I peered from that window to check my surroundings. I was relieved to see that this horrifying entity was no longer there. I glanced to my left, then the right. It was really gone. Naturally, I rushed into my front seat and I started the engine. Before pulling off, I saw a large glowing object rise out from the trees. It was cigar-shaped and gave off the same loud humming sound from earlier. Even though I was terrified, I found myself transfixed by this once-in-a-lifetime moment. It was cigar-shaped and gave off the same loud humming sound from earlier. Even though I was terrified, I found myself transfixed by this once-in-a-lifetime moment. Before I knew it, the craft shot up into the air faster than I could blink. Afterwards, I pulled out of the field and kept driving until I found civilization. This was truly a harrowing experience for me, one that truly changed my outlook. Never had I believed the supernatural or aliens, but my experience was all too real. I ended up keeping the story to myself for the longest. After all, a homeless guy who saw an alien probably wouldn't sound good. I ended up finding myself a job and an apartment. No longer interested in the nomadic lifestyle. Presently, I have been started dating a beautiful waitress. Even though my life is pretty normal, I still have strange moments. Every once in a while, whenever I'm alone, I feel as if I can still hear the creature calling out to me, telling me that they are still watching and haven't forgotten me. But for the sake of normalcy, I try to ignore it. I often wonder what would have happened if I went with them. Was it a trap to hurt me, or would they have really shown me all these amazing things? I guess it doesn't matter now, but I will never forget my close encounter on that dreadly farmstead.
I grew up in a quiet little town where the biggest excitement was the annual summer fair. It was the kind of a place where everyone knew everyone, and nothing much ever changed until the night the flicker came. It started as a local legend. The elders would whisper about it, cautioning children to be indoors before dark. The flicker was said to be a spectral entity that appeared as a brief flash of light, often glimpsed out of the corner of your eye. Most dismissed it as superstition, a story to keep kids from wandering the streets at night. But those who had encountered it spoke of it with a harsh dread. I was 17 when I first saw the flicker. I was walking home from my friend Alex's house. The night air cool against my skin, the street lights cast long shadows, and the only sound was the distant hum of a cicadas. Then out of nowhere a flash of light to my left. I turned, but there was nothing there, just the same empty street. Shaking my head, I convinced myself it was just my imagination and hurried home. The next day, Alex was absent from school. Concerned, I decided to visit him after classes. His mother answered the door, her eyes red from crying. Alex had gone missing during the night. There was no sign of a struggle, no note. He had simply vanished. The town was abuzz with speculation, but no one could explain his disappearance. Over the next few weeks, more people began to vanish, always at night and always preceded by a sighting of the flicker. It wasn't long before the town was gripped by fear. One evening, as I sat in my room trying to make sense of it all, the lights began to flicker. My heart raced as I stared at the bulb, willing it to stay lit. Suddenly, the room was plunged into darkness. In the pitch black, I saw it, a brief, bright flash in the corner of my eye. I turned slowly, dread pulling in my stomach. Standing in the corner of my room was the figure, barely discernible in the darkness. It seemed to be made of shadows, its form shifting and flickering like a candle in the wind. Its eyes, however, were piercingly bright, almost blinding. I was frozen in place, unable to move or scream. The figure spoke. its voice a whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It said, "You must leave. This town is mine." The room suddenly flooded with light as the power returned. The figure was gone, but the terror lingered. I knew I couldn't stay. I packed a bag, left a note from my parents, and took the first bus out of the town. For years I moved from place to place, trying to escape the memories of that night. But the flicker was always there, lurking in the shadows, a constant reminder of the terror I had fled. I tried to warn others, but no one believed me. They thought I was crazy, haunted by a figment of my imagination. One night, as I sat in a dingy motel room, the lights began to flicker. I knew what was coming. I had run for so long, but the flicker had finally caught up with me. The room went dark, and I saw it again, the shadowy figure with eyes like burning coals. "You cannot escape," it whispered. "Your fate is sealed." This time there was no running. I stood my ground, my heart pounding in my chest. "What do you want to do? What do you want from me?" I demanded, my voice trembling. The figure moved closer, its form flickering and shifting. "Your fear," it said simply. "Your despair." I realized then that the flicker fed on fear, drawing strength from the terror it instilled in its victims. It wasn't just a malevolent spirit, it was a parasite thriving on the darkness within us. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "I won't be afraid of you anymore," I declared. "You can't control me." The figure paused, its eyes narrowing. For a moment it seemed uncertain. Then, with a final blinding flash, it disappeared. The lights came back on, and I was alone in the room. The flicker was gone, but the scares remained. I knew it would always be out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the next person to succumb to its terror. But I had faced my fear, and in doing so, I had weakened its hold on me. I returned to my hometown, determined to help others overcome their fear. I shared my story, and slowly the legend of the flicker lost its power. The town began to heal, and the disappearances stopped. Years later, as I walked through the now peaceful streets, I caught a brief flash of light out of the corner of my eye. I turned, but there was nothing there, just an empty street, bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun. The flicker would always be a part of our history, a reminder of the darkness that lurks within us all. But as long as we faced our fears, it would never hold power over us again. Pathfinder. The notification appeared on my phone out of nowhere. No download, no prompt, just a mysterious icon labeled Pathfinder. Curiosity mingled with unease as I tapped on it, half expecting my phone to glitch or freeze. Instead, the app launched seamlessly, displaying a stark message. "Do you want to know if you will be murdered?" I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen. The rational part of my mind screamed that this was nonsense, a prank or a marketing gimmick gone wrong. But a nagging curiosity compelled me to tap yes. What harm could a silly app do, anyway? The screen flickered, processing my request, before displaying the chilling words, "Your friend Jeremy will be your murderer." The blood ran cold as a shiver crept down my spine. Well, Jeremy, my best friend since college, the guy who had stood by me through thick and thin. How could this be possible? I tried to shake off the app's prediction as absurd. Jeremy was loyal, dependable, and last person I would suspect of harboring dark intentions. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it took root in the recesses of my mind, growing with each passing day. Faithfinder didn't let me forget his prediction. Periodic reminders popped up at the most inconvenient times, during meetings, in the middle of the night, even when I was out with my friends. No matter how many times I tried to delete the app, it reappeared on my phone like a persistent specter, taunting me with its ominous message. I couldn't bear the weight of uncertainty. I couldn't bear the weight of uncertainty alone, so I confided in Jeremy. His reaction was a mixture of misbelief and amusement. Come on, man, it's just an app. He reassured me. His voice tingled with skepticism. You can't seriously believe that nonsense, can you? I wanted to believe him, to laugh off Faithfinder's prediction as a glitch in the digital ether. But as the days turned into weeks, I found myself watching Jeremy with a weary eye, analyzing his every word and gesture for any hint of deception. Each time he remained the same steadfast friend I had always known, his easy smile and infectious laughter dispelling my doubts. For a time, one evening Jeremy invited me over to his apartment for dinner. As we sat across from each other, savoring homemade lasagna and swapping stories, the weight of Faithfinder's prediction hung heavy in the air between us. I tried to ignore the growing unease in the pit of my stomach, but it was impossible to escape the app's relentless grip on my thoughts. After dinner, we retreated to the living room where Jeremy suggested we watch a horror movie to lighten the mood. I agreed reluctantly, my mind racing with unanswered questions and unspoken fears. The movie played on the screen, the sound of Eric music and distant screams filling the room with a palpable tension. Halfway through the movie, Jeremy excused himself to fetch more popcorn from the kitchen. Alone in the dimly lighted room, I tried to focus on the movie, to lose myself in the fictional horrors unfolding on screen. But Faithfinder's prophecy loomed large in my mind, casting a shadow over everything I held dear. Minutes stretches into an eternity as I waited for Jeremy to return. The silence was deafening, broken only by the distant hum of the refrigerator and the muffled sounds of the movie playing in the background. A sense of dread settled over me like a heavy blanket, suffocating me with its oppressive weight. Just as I was about to call out to Jeremy, a piercing scream shattered the silence, echoing through the apartment with bone-chilling clarity. Adrenaline surged through my veins as I bolted from the couch, heart pounding in my chest. I raced toward the kitchen, dread crawling at my insides. What I found there defied all logic and reason. Jeremy lay sprawled on the kitchen floor, his body twisted at an unnatural angle, blood pooling around him in a dark, ominous puddle. Shock rooted me to the spot as I stared down at his lifeless form. Disbelief and horror warning within me. Was the app incorrect? The police arrived soon after, their questions a blur of noise in the haze of my fractured reality. They ruled Jeremy's death as a tragic accident, a fall down the stairs that had claimed his life in an instant. But I knew the truth, or at least I thought I did. Week passed in a blur of grief and unanswered questions. I buried myself in work, trying to drown out the nightmares that haunted my sleepless nights. But Faithfinder's prediction lingered in the darkest corners of my mind, a constant reminder of the fragility of life and the unpredictability of fate. One night, as I lay awake in bed, fermented my memories of that fateful evening, a notification from Faithfinder flashed on my phone. With trembling hands, I opened the app, half expecting to see Jeremy's face staring back at me from the screen. Instead, a new message appeared, sending a chill down my spine. You will be your own murderer. The words hit me like a slag hammer, and their implications too horrifying to comprehend. Had Faith Finder been right all along, not about Jeremy, but about me? Was I destined to meet the same tragic fate that had befallen my best friend? In a desperate bid for answers, I delved deeper into the app's interface, scouring every menu and submenu for clues. But there were no explanations, no rationalizations, only the cold, unfeeling words of a digital oracle that had shattered my world beyond repair. As soon as I set my phone down, I received a notification from Faith Finder, and it was incoming video call says hi to Jeremy.